It should have killed him. By every law of physics, by every field manual, by every ounce of common sense a human being can muster, it should have killed him. Because no man walks into a German minefield with nothing but a dented metal bucket and lives to tell anyone about it. And yet a 19-year-old American private did exactly that. When his squad reached a quiet orchard outside a rural French crossroads in 1944, the place felt wrong the moment they saw it. Too still, too untouched after days of chaos. Mines were a constant threat, and the Germans were masters of placing them where soldiers had no choice but to step. But the engineers were hours behind, and the platoon needed to move. Someone had to check the ground. Someone young. Someone with orders. That someone was Private Miller. He had no mine detector. No prodding rod. No training beyond a 5-minute safety lecture 3 weeks earlier. What he did have was fear, a stubborn instinct to survive, and a metal bucket from an abandoned farmhouse they had just passed. His squad leader told him to stay low, move slow, and stop the moment he felt anything strange underfoot. Miller didn't even make it 3 steps before he froze. Not because he felt a mine, he felt nothing at all, and that was the problem. The orchard was too clean. Someone had removed leaves and then put them back. Someone had scraped faint straight lines into the soil. Someone had worked here recently. Miller backed up, breathing hard, holding the bucket in his hands like a useless piece of junk. But as he looked at it, he noticed something. The bottom was misshapen, slightly curved inward from some long-ago impact. He tapped it with his knuckles, and the metal rang with a sharp, hollow tone. That sound, he realized, could change if the bucket struck something buried below. He didn't think the idea was smart. In fact, he would later admit the only reason he even tried it was because he couldn't think of anything else. But he also knew this. The pressure required to trigger most German anti-personnel mines was far greater than the force of a bucket falling from a foot or 2 above the ground. So he took a breath, extended his arm, and dropped the bucket in front of him. The sound it made was dull and harmless. Normal. He stepped forward, retrieved it, and dropped it again. Another normal thud. On the 3rd drop, the tone changed, just slightly. A hint of metallic resonance beneath the leaves. Miller crouched, swept the soil aside with trembling fingers, and saw it, the wooden top plate of a Schutzen mine, flush with the earth, invisible until he was nearly on top of it. He swallowed hard, backed away, and marked the spot with a broken branch. His squad stared with a mix of disbelief and growing unease. He tried again, dropping the bucket a foot to the left, a different tone this time, sharper, another mine, and another. The orchard wasn't just mined, it was layered. A trap designed to cripple an entire platoon. The squad leader told him to stop, but Miller wasn't hearing anything except the ringing in his ears and his own pulse. He found a rhythm. Drop, listen, step, repeat. The bucket became an improvised sonar, each clatter a signal, each vibration a clue. He moved slowly, methodically, and incredibly he stayed alive. 1 mine. 3 mines, 7, 13, 20. His squad watched in stunned silence as the teenager with the bucket mapped the orchard like a surgeon feeling for fractures. By the time he was done, they counted nearly 40 mines, positioned so tightly that a single misstep would have triggered a chain reaction. When the engineers finally arrived, they didn't believe the story until they saw the grid of exposed tops, each one uncovered with eerie precision. One of them shook his head and muttered that whoever taught the kid his instincts deserved a medal. Miller said no one taught him anything. He just wanted to go home. The squad walked out of that orchard in total silence, not because they were afraid, but because they understood just how close they had come to losing half their men. Years later, the veterans who survived that day would tell the story like it was some kind of miracle, but Miller himself hated that word. He always said it wasn't a miracle at all. It was desperation. It was fear channeled into clear thinking. It was a moment where a single bad idea, tested carefully, turned into the only idea that could save them. War has a way of forcing ordinary people into extraordinary decisions. Decisions made in seconds but remembered for a lifetime. And sometimes the difference between tragedy and survival isn't training or experience. Sometimes it's a 19-year-old private, a dented metal bucket, and the courage to trust a sound that no one else could hear. And that is why those who were there insisted the story was true. Not because it was grand or dramatic, but because it was exactly the kind of quiet Unlikely brilliance that kept soldiers alive in a war where everything else tried to kill them. In the end, the bucket was thrown away, the orchard cleared, and the war moved on. But for the men whose lives were spared that day, the memory never moved anywhere. It stayed with them, sharp as shrapnel, for the rest of their lives. Because sometimes survival comes not from strength or heroism, but from a single moment when a young soldier refuses to freeze, refuses to quit, and chooses instead to think. And that choice, made by one private in one forgotten orchard, saved 40 lives. That is the kind of story worth remembering.